Well, New York Giant fans, we have another preview on deck. Of course, it is the New York Football Giants hosting the Baltimore Ravens in their second to last home game of the season, which means we're getting closer to the end of the season, which I would bet on most Giant fans are pretty damn happy for. But if you're a Raven fan, of course, you're playing it down till the end of the season to get into the playoffs. So congratulations on you guys actually having a good football team. But welcome back to the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast, everyone. Hit the like button, comment, and subscribe. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. Share this out. Do all the good stuff. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get on a Ravens guy. It seems like it's been hit or miss with that. Sometimes it's my fault because I reach out a little too late. But nonetheless, we weren't able to get the guy on that we had 2 years ago. I think his name was Kyle, but nonetheless, he probably was occupied of some sorts. So it will just be a straight-through preview today. As for first thoughts, before we get into anything else, I mean, obviously the Giants have made another quarterback change. I would anticipate maybe it changes again next week because I think at the time, Drew Lock will probably be healthy. But then again, too, we might see Tim Boyle as well. So it's just a mess. But this is the laughing stock that we have to endure for the rest of the season. And I wonder if we're going to not just see one plane, but two planes. You know, there's those drones supposedly flying around. Maybe we'll see some drones, too, at MetLife Stadium, in addition to a plane or two flying over the stadium and telling John Mara to fix this dumpster fire. But the Ravens, I mean, this is just another game to try to catch up in that division. I believe they're a game off the Steelers. Yeah, they're about 2 games off the Steelers right now. The Steelers will be playing the Eagles, so the Eagles, very good team. The Steelers will be kind of rooting for the Giants, and the Ravens, of course, will be rooting for the Eagles. So the Birds will be rooting for the Birds, no surprise. So they're playing for the divisional hopes and, of course, playoff hopes, but right now they're the 5th seed in the AFC, so they really, they still have a good shot. They're 8-5. Like, what, it's not like it's oh my God, they're not going to make the playoffs. As for the Giants, I mean, this is another loss in a row that we're talking about coming off of last week to the New Orleans Saints. You see how the tone changes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th loss in a row. This one definitely could be number 9. But 8th loss in a row for the New York Football Giants last week against New Orleans Saints, which I believe kind of matches Pat Shurmur's days of being a Giants head coach when they lost like a bunch in a row. So at that time, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So they lost 9 in a row at one point. And I think this game just shows my tone on the game. I think this will be loss number 9, and then, of course, maybe after that, number 10. We'll get into that individually. But I think from a single game lens, not the 8-game losing streak, from a single game lens, if you get blown out this game, obviously it's a bad situation for Brian Daboll because I'm not going to even assume that they're tanking. Like, this is just bad football being played. But if this game is not played well or like played competitively, then Brian Daboll will probably be fired at the end of the year, or his job is gonna, get hotter. His seat is gonna get hotter. The noose is gonna tighten around his neck a little bit. Now, as far as Joe Shane, I would think the same thing because many assume. I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I really haven't made any staunch predictions. Many assume that he's going to be back for another head coach pick. I would happen to think for right now that could be true, but it's really weird to have a 9-win team, then a 6-win team, then a 2-win team, and get your job back when people have been fired for much less. I mean, Tom Coughlin was fired after 2 consecutive, maybe 3 consecutive. I'm pretty sure it was 2 consecutive 6-win seasons. So just wanted to put that out there because I think 2014 when Odell came in, it was 6-10, and then the season prior was 6-10. But so for these two guys to keep their jobs is just a competitive. It's a competitive win or a competitive loss, better yet, because of all the different things hovering around this team. And, the players have to fight for you. They fought. They almost tied the game against the New Orleans Saints, but obviously that didn't happen. So you got two sides of the spectrum, if you will. And, again, like, down the stretch, it's going to be about the young players for the New York Giants and who Joe Shane brought in. Obviously, some guys are hurt. But you can't really have the same tone from the players that you invested in last game, this game. And I'm talking guys like, Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, he got a garbage time sack. I'm going to call it that because, that's what it was. Brian Burns, he kind of got a garbage time sack. I mean, the Giants were still down at that point. And all these other different things where they weren't really productive. I know they had TFLs left and right, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, it was a good defensive performance, but you just saw more heart out of guys like Micah McFadden, Elijah Chapman, the younger cats, the guys that were less invested in than the guys that were more invested in. I mean, hell, you don't see that out of Tay Banks. So, and he's questionable. I mean, we'll talk about the injury report in a second, but you got to have everybody fighting. It can't be just, the vets and the high invested guys, they give a 50%, and the 100% goes to all the guys fighting for jobs. Like, it can't be that uneven. So, going to the injury report for the Baltimore Ravens, Rashad Bateman is going to play. Adisa Isaac, he was limited in practice on Friday. He is questionable. Sanusi Kane, he has a hamstring injury, limited Friday in practice. He's questionable. Michael Pierce and TJ Tampa are trying to make their way back from the injured reserve. My belief, based on the injury report, is that they will play. Tampa was drafted in the 4th round, I want to say, out of Iowa State. I actually wanted him. And then Michael Pierce, obviously, he's a vet. He's been with multiple teams. He's at the middle of that defense. He is questionable with a calf injury. Tampa questionable with an ankle injury. So it looks like they're going to play. And then Kyle Van Noy going through practice with a hamstring and neck injury. He was full practice all week, and he will play. The Giants had just about everybody on the injury report. Tay Banks is questionable with a rib injury. He was limited all week. Dane Belton is going to play with a knee injury. Jermaine Lemonor, quad injury. Looks like he's going to play, which is a good thing. It's a good step in the direction for the O-line. Josh Azudu, knee injury. Looks like he's going to play. Cordell Flott is doubtful, so that's bad for the secondary. At the corner 2 position, Bryce Ford-Wheaton, shoulder injury, limited. Art Green, full practice with a quad injury. Chris Hubbard, questionable with a knee injury. Dante Johnson, I really want to see him. I really want to see him this week because he's a bigger body a little bit, and we saw in the preseason how he fit Shane Bowen's scheme like a glove. Against the Detroit Lions, he was sacking guys. He was making the right reads. He was tacking the ball carrier. And this is a game you're kind of going to need that. A, evaluation, and B, you're going to need that play because you're facing Derrick Henry. But, so he's got the ankle injury, full practice. Drew Lock, he is doubtful to go, heel and left elbow injury. It looks like he's going to be emergency quarterback 3. Hopefully you don't get to that, but Tim Boyle will probably be number 2. Malik Neighbors, hip injury, he's good to go. Evan Neal, hip and ankle injury. That's a good thing for the New York Giants that Evan Neal is good to go in a sense. I'm not saying it's all good, but when you think of it this way, Jermaine Lemonor is going to play, and you also have Neal on the right side. That is better than the alternative of having a Zudu or Hubbard or any of these other guys. I would personally experiment, and this would obviously put an end to the Evan Neal experience in New York. I would personally put Tyree Phillips at right tackle and the left tackle being a Lemonor, and then you just sort out the interior. John Michael Schmitz was limited with a neck injury during the week. He's going to play. John Runyon is out with an ankle injury. Some say he might be out for the rest of the season. So it's either going to be Aaron Stinney or Jake Kubis. Personally, I'd rather put the stock in Kubis because while Stinney did decent last week, he's not going to be here beyond this season. So there's that. I would like to see Jake Kubis. I thought he did fairly well last week. Austin Schlodman, fibula injury. Obviously, he had an injury with that in training camp. He's questionable. I wouldn't rush him back. I mean, he's a vet. You really don't need to see much out of him. Jordan Riley, knee injury. He is ready to go. No injury designation for him. Raheem Nunez-Roches, neck and shoulder injury. He is out. Bobby Okereke, back injury. He is out. And Drew Phillips, shoulder injury. He is also out. So, crippling injuries for the New York Giants, especially on the defense, because you're obviously missing DL for the rest of the year, Dexter Lawrence. You're missing Nacho, who's probably your second best run defender defensively on the interior. You're missing Okereke, who's your Mike. And Michael McFadden's done a nice job, so I don't think that's like a huge drop-off. I think McFadden's outplayed Bobby Okereke this entire season. And then you go into the secondary, where your safeties are there. Tyler Nubin, which we haven't even talked about, is done for the rest of the year. So you're going to need contributions from Dane Belton and Jason Pinnock, who were the safeties last year other than Xavier McKinney. And, do you stretch anyone else to that safety spot? Anthony Johnson, but Johnson really hasn't played much on defense this year. It seemed like it was just a special teams waiver wire acquisition for the New York Giants. They also signed Devad Wilson and D. Williams shortly this week. So I don't know what they're going to do. D. Williams, I know, is more of a kick returner, though we already have Amir Smith-Marset, who's done a nice job. Simmons, maybe he could play some safety. I really wouldn't want to bank on it. But other than Pinnock and Dane Belton, you really don't have safeties on the roster. So somebody's going to transition. Trey Hawkins is done for the rest of the year. So looking at the DB room, you don't have too many safeties. I mean, maybe you bring up Raheem Lane from the practice squad, who played a little bit with the Los Angeles Chargers not too long ago. But, it's just, you're very thin. You're very thin at that position, and the Giants are going to have to adjust their looks to the Ravens, and, of course, due to the injuries. So, again, I would really like to see Jay Kubas at the guard spot. I would like to see a couple of different guys, but also the corner room is hurt because you have Drew Phillips, who is out. You have Corder Flood, who's doubtful. Leaves you with Banks, Jackson, and somebody in the slot. Likely Greg Roman. I don't see D. Williams or Devad Wilson getting any notable time in there. Worst case scenario, you go with Art Green. So, Wilson, of course, is a former Arizona Cardinal and Jacksonville Jaguar. Just to add some context onto that situation. And also, who knows, they might pull up somebody from the practice squad because you still have Azizi Hearn and Ako Boydo. If I'm saying that correctly, that's a really rhymey name. But, so that's that. Now to get into the Ravens and the Giants team stats. Ravens, they are the first best offense total yards-wise in the NFL. They are fifth best in passing, second best in running, and third in points per game. Now, defensively is where they struggle the most. Mike McDonald isn't there to continue the continuity. He is the Seattle Seahawks head coach. So Zach Orr is the defensive coordinator. And I'd have to think it's two things. I'd have to think it's scheme. I'd also have to think it's the middle of the field because you look at their secondary stats, and we could go through it right now. Total yards per game, they're 22nd. 32nd against the pass. First against the run, and 24th in points per game, which is kind of crazy because I think there were similar numbers to the Giants' 2015 defense where they were a decent run defense, but pass defense, they couldn't defend anybody to save their life. So, I would say either it's scheme and lack of adjustments in the first part of the year and giving up a shit ton of yards to Jamar Chase and all these other different receivers. And again, the middle of the field, being open as well. So there's that. Now, in terms of analytics, 29th in pass percentage, 4th in run percentage, 27th in pass percentage of first down, 7th in run percentage of first down, 23rd in blitz percentage, 20th in pressure percentage, but they do get the sacks. They're third in the NFL. So they're kind of like the Giants in that way. But I like to think that they're a little bit more consistent in getting to the quarterback than the New York Football Giants are. Now, as far as the New York Giants go, 26th in total yards on offense, 28th in passing. Rushing, they're 15th and 32nd in points per game. Now, defensively, 16th in total yards per game, 6th against the pass, 29th against the run, and 16th in points per game. Now, in terms of the metrics, 7th in pass percentage, 26th in run percentage, 16th in pass percentage on first down, 13th in run percentage on first down, 11th in blitz percentage, 19th in pressure percentage, and 6th in sacks. So going to things to look for, there's a couple of different things in the way this could be attacked by both teams. Now, to focus on the Ravens offense versus the Giants defense, the Giants are obviously out a couple of key pieces, as mentioned earlier. You got Drew Phillips, you got Bobby Okereke, who's out, you have Cordell Flott, who's out, you have Tyler Nubin, who's out, you have Dex, who's out. So there's a couple of different ways you could look to attack this team. They're the first best offense in the NFL, obviously the 5th best in the passing game, running game. They're 2nd best. So my automatic thinker is probably run the football. Now, of course, you'll succeed with one of the ways. I don't think the Giants will be this lockdown defense against the Baltimore Ravens because one of those holes is going to open up. But my first thing is attack the ground game because Derrick Henry is a big fucking player, one of the more dominant running backs in this league. I think he's got over 1,000 yards, definitely, I think over 1,400 to be exact. So one of the rushing leaders across the NFL. And your thin linebacker, I mean, McFadden's a nice piece, but is he going to be able to tackle Derrick Henry on the first try? Nunez Roches is out. DJ Davidson done for the rest of the year. So you're lining up your front with Tibbs and Burns on the edge, who haven't been like great against the run, followed by Elijah Chapman, Corey Durden, and Jordan Riley in the middle. It doesn't set up as a great matchup for the Giants on the inside. Again, you have McFadden. Maybe you bring back Johnson. Darius Muastow kind of stinks, and he's a bigger guy, so I wouldn't really trust him to have the responsibilities of tackling Derrick Henry. And then, why I say that over passing the football, because, even though they're both good in those areas, is that Drew Phillips provides a sound presence in the running game in which you could say that Greg Stroman, even though he made a few nice plays last week, he does not consistently do that. Banks is not a run supporter, and neither is Adoree Jackson. So, Stroman's decent, but he's been a vet across the league. I believe he's almost in his 30s if he's not already. So you really can't rely on that. That's where attacking the ground game goes. And as far as Giants in missed tackles this season, because, they had a shit ton of them against the Dallas Cowboys. Last week they were a little bit better. But as far as missed tackles go, they're in the top 10. All right, they're in the top 10. They're not top 5, but they're in the top 10 in missed tackles. So you kind of have to figure that out. Now, as far as the passing game goes, I'll talk about something that could impact the passing game for the Baltimore Ravens, and it's also something that could affect the running game. But again, you look at the secondary. Muastow is not good, as I said, at the linebacker spot, so he's not going to be good in coverage. McFadden's decent in coverage. Better run stopper, though, by far. You look at the corners going up against their wide receivers. You have Mark Andrews there, who has been a piece. You have Isaiah Likely, who's been a piece in the receiving game. Zay Flowers, who was drafted last year's drafted wide receiver. So you look at that and you go up against our secondary. Banks, he hasn't been good, and he hasn't played in a little bit. That's number one. Number two is Adoree Jackson, who's getting older. He made a few nice plays last week, but that was also against one of the worst offenses in the NFL. And then you have Greg Stroman or Art Green presumptively in the slot, or you have Jackson in the slot. So either way, it's not going to pan out as we would want it to. Now, put that aside, the Ravens offensive line and the Ravens in general are one of the most penalized teams across the NFL. I believe they're top 4. You look at their left tackle, and of course we'll go into statistics in a little bit. Their left tackle has got 13 penalties on the season. I think their left guard has 13 penalties for the left guard, 11 penalties for the left tackle, and then 7 penalties among the center, 6 penalties at the right guard position, and 4 for Roger Rosengarten. there are ways, and Dex would take advantage of it 100% if he was still with the team healthy. Obviously, he's not. So Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau have to do their job in helping out the back end, getting there, and not just getting there, but also affecting the status of play with the penalties, draw a holding penalty, draw this, draw that, illegal block in the back. It just seems like they lack discipline, and of course, some penalties will come on defense. So if it's Malik Neighbors getting open and he draws a pass interference penalty or there's an offsides, attacking the penalty areas, and I'm pretty sure the Giants have watched film on this repeatedly during the week, or their analytics guys did research on where the penalties are most for the Ravens. Those are the areas that you definitely want to hit. And again, the offensive line is definitely one of those, so the Giants' defense will need to do their job. As far as, by the way, I just wanted to recap this from the week. This was December 12th, so this was Thursday's practice. The Giants practiced in 30 degrees and 18-mile-an-hour winds, but went 0 for 17 on passes, 0 for 4 versus the air, 0 for 3 in one-on-ones versus defenders, combo of drops, catches out of bounds, overthrows, and defensive plays. And there was maybe a penalty drawn by Wan'Dale Robinson, but it's interesting that we, I know Daniel Jones was a huge issue at quarterback, but the Giants did such a great job of prepping behind him in case of injury or cut or this or that, that we have Drew Lock being as terrible as he was and Tommy DeVito not being as good as he is. So there's that. Now, as far as how to attack this Ravens defense, they are one of the best against the run, as I stated. So it's going to be very tough to attack them that way, especially, I don't know how Kubis or Stinney. Kubis, you don't know about a little bit more. He did better in pass blocking, I'd like to think, in the preseason. But these are guys that really haven't gotten their way in snaps and stuff like that. So we'll see where the interior guys are better on. But the Giants will have to attempt to attack that weak secondary. Now, statistically, they're not weak, but also, I should say weak defense. Let's start with saying weak defense because their secondary statistically has not been bad, but the middle of the field could use work. Roquan Smith hasn't been great in coverage, has really never been good in coverage, but there's a number of guys who contribute to that, and also the scheme. But if there's a vote of confidence for you Raven fans out there that may be tuning into this show, also, by the way, Trenton Simpson is not a good linebacker in the middle of the field, as he's given up 3 touchdowns and 121.4 passer rating. The vote of confidence is Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito and Tim Boyle are going to be your choice of quarterbacks. Well, not their choice, but the Giants' choice of quarterbacks. And this, even though you're playing a bad offense, it could be used as a hype thing. It could be used as, hey, we start, with this game, and then we could start playing better as a defense. And, just in time for the playoffs. That's the best teams, and that's how they go about it. You heat up just in time for the playoffs. So that's really attempting to attack the weak defense, middle of the field type stuff. Daniel Bellinger and Malik Neighbors are probably my 2 X factors on offense, thinking that way. And, of course, if you want to run with Tyrone Tracy in terms of routes, you can, but I don't really see them doing that. Wan'Dale Robinson, too. Now, as far as the stats goes, players to watch, Lamar Jackson is having an MVP-esque season. Some of the best stats I've seen from Lamar Jackson. 3 interceptions, 29 touchdowns, 253 yards per game, 3,290 yards, a completion percentage of 67. He's having a career year. He's right along Josh Allen. I think he's got more passing touchdowns than Josh Allen. And Saquon Barkley is also in the MVP race. So there's a couple of tidbit candidates there. Now, as far as the rushing game goes, Derrick Henry, he's been big. He's got 14 runs over 20. He's got 13 touchdowns. His longest carry was 87 yards. I'm forgetting the team he did that against, but it was a big run, of course. 108.2 yards per game on the ground. You have Lamar Jackson, who always factors in, so he's got 3 touchdowns and 5 plays over 20. Henry's got 1,407 yards, 5.9 yards per carry, and Lamar Jackson 678, 6.1 yards per carry, 52.2 yards per game. I don't think that the Giants are going to go ahead and have this great rushing defense game, me personally. Now, if you look at the offensive line metrics, they block better when they're passing, not when they're running, even though it is a pretty even-keeled offensive line for the most part. So it's going to be interesting how to see the Giants defense plays this, but I don't think they're going to have a good game like they had last week or against Dallas, my personal opinion. As I said, you also have Justice Hill in the receiving game. Zay Flowers is about 137 yards away from 1,000. He's got 17 catches of over 20 yards, 4 touchdowns, 863 yards, 14.4 yards per catch. Followed by Rashad Bateman, 5 touchdowns this season, 574 yards, 16.4 yards per reception, 7 plays over 20. Followed by Mark Andrews, who's getting in the fray, 7 touchdowns, 490 yards, 11.4 yards per catch, 4 big plays over 20. And then I'll go to the guy after him just to finish it off, Isaiah Likely, 384 yards on the season, 11.6 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns, 4 plays over 20 yards. So as far as the offensive line goes, as I was mentioning with the penalties, Ronnie Stanley, veteran, he does get hurt often, but he's good, has had the penalty bug this season, 11 penalties, 0 sacks, and he's a better pass blocker. Pat McCarry, 13 penalties, 1 sack. He's a better run blocker. Tyler Linderbaum, 7 penalties, 0 sacks. He's a better run blocker. Daniel Falele is a better pass blocker, 6 penalties, 1 sack. And Roger Rosengarten, 4 penalties, 4 sacks. He's a better pass blocker. Now to move to the defense. You got Kyle Van Noy, who's playing really well this season. He is among the leaders in sacks for the team in general. Van Noy has played a number of years in the NFL, has a total of 17 pressures, 8 sacks, 26 total tackles, 15 quarterback hits, and 10 TFLs. Now, following him is the former Penn State draft pick, not Adisa Isaac, but guy in Odafe Owe, 8 sacks, 32 tackles, 7 TFLs, 19 quarterback hits to go along with 23 pressures. So he's having a career year. And then you move on to the guy who renamed himself. I think that might have been his birth name or something like that. I'm going to try to get his name. I think it's Namni Matabuki. So apologies if I'm not pronouncing that right, but he's got 12 quarterback hits on the season, 5 total sacks, 7 TFLs, and 14 pressures. So he got paid a couple of years ago, and he's really banking in on it. Next guy you got is Roquan Smith, 1 TFL, 1 sack, 82. Wait, wrong stats, my opinion. My bad. Excuse me. But Roquan Smith on the season, he's not been great in coverage, as I have stated previously, and of course we'll move to Trenton Simpson afterward. Half a sack, 121 tackles, 2 quarterback hits, 3 TFLs, and in coverage, 2 touchdowns given up, 1 interception, 111.7 passer rating. You move to Trenton Simpson, who was their draft pick out of Clemson just a couple of years ago. I believe that was 21 or 22. Total of 72 tackles, 1.5 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, 4 pass deflections, and passer rating at 121.4, 3 touchdowns allowed, 242 yards, no interceptions in the season. Moving to the secondary, Marlon Humphrey, for when he's been healthy, he's had a good season, 12 pass deflections, a forced fumble, 57.4 passer rating, 3 touchdowns allowed to go along with a number of 5 interceptions, 58.2 completion percentage, and 370 yards. Brent Stevens, 8 pass deflections, 3 touchdowns given up, 109.8 passer rating. So he's the weakness to attack for this defense, 762 yards, 65.8 completion percentage, and no interceptions of the season. Then you go to the other corners. I'll include 2. The rookie Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. He's played really well this season, 70.1 passer rating. No interceptions yet, 47.8 completion percentage, 311 yards. And Tre'Davious White, who hasn't played much, but he played 3 games for the Ravens after coming over from L.A., 45.8 passer rating, completion percentage at 37.5. That's at least with the Baltimore Ravens. With the Rams, he stunk it up a little bit. I guess he wasn't a fit for that defense. And then finally, before we go to predictions and all that sort of stuff, we got Marcus Williams, the former safety from the New Orleans Saints. That's 7 assisted tackles, but 1 tackle for a loss, 33 tackles total. No quarterback hits, 11 games this season, I believe. Yep, 11 games this season. 148.4 passer rating, no bueno. That's the worst in his career, calculated to this point. 3 touchdowns, 295 yards, no interceptions, 66.7 completion percentage. So, not great. That's an area you probably want to attack. So, Daniel Bellinger or possibly Tyrone Tracy. That's my 2 options because Manhurts or some of the other running backs are really not going to pose a threat. So, keys to win. I'm going to say stop the run. That's number 1. Derrick Henry is a force. They run the ball more than they pass the ball. And, of course, that shows up in the statistics and the analytics. And, of course, through both avenues, they create success. So, stop the run, and it will pretty much flow. You also have to attack the penalty areas. If their defense, I only know about the O-line, but if their defense gives up a lot of big plays or, if their defense gives up big plays via penalty, like a pass interference or an offsides penalty, you got to attack those areas. Attack their weaknesses of being undisciplined. So that's number 2. And number 3 is got to get something going on offense, so attack the weaknesses in their defense. Roquan Smith, Trenton Simpson, guys that are not good in coverage. You got Brandon Stevens as the weakness at corner, slightly. And, of course, you have Marcus Williams, who isn't great in coverage. So those are some weaknesses to attack. Tommy DeVito is, of course, the quarterback, so you want to take as less sacks as possible. And I happen to believe that the O-line shouldn't be too much of an issue, though it has changed again. But Illuminor's coming back, which provides some stability. He was good at left tackle, or at least solid at left tackle, and I stand on that. So as far as this final score prediction for the New York Giants and the Baltimore Ravens, I think this is probably at least a 2-score game. I'm going to say 26. Baltimore Ravens get 26. Let's go with the Giants reach the end zone once. 26-10. Baltimore Ravens win this game. Like, comment, subscribe. Do all of the good stuff. Turn on post notifications so you know when a live stream pops or a video drops. I appreciate you guys coming back, and, trust me, these previews do get boring. I understand throughout the end of the season when there's nothing to play for, the Giants suck. And there's really nothing to look forward to unless, coach gets fired or this, that, and the third, or a divisional matchup even, but even then it's shady. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Keep up with the baseball content, definitely, as the Yankees continue to make moves to improve their team this offseason. We will be on that. I appreciate you guys so much, and we'll talk to you soon.